Okay, thanks for tuning in. So, tonight's remote view is about Myanmar. It's one of those remote views where I don't even know how I wound up in Myanmar, but uh, that is where I wound up. And uh, so basically, what I saw is that a kind of paranoia has the best way to describe to put yourself into the energy if you're a remote viewer and you're trying to scan the grid, Myanmar, and you're trying to get information about the energy of the people that govern Myanmar. Okay, if that's your target and you go in, you lock on the target, you go in, you're trying to get into the collective headspace of the military. Here's what you find, for me anyway. It feels like a collective type of paranoia, like anybody and everybody could be a spy. They're trying to weed out rebels. There are rebels in our midst. There's this paranoia in the military where they're specifically going after minority groups, massacring certain minorities that have a history of organizing rebel attacks against the military. So now the military is convinced that there are these groups, four or five separate groups. There's separatist groups and groups that are attempting to overthrow them. And I mean, I could be here all night. It's like four or five different, everybody talks about this one group, but they're saying it's like four or five groups. But anyway, basically, for me as a remote viewer, they're all getting together and they're organizing and they're meeting after dark and they're doing all this stuff. And the military has gotten paranoid. And instead of creating unity within Myanmar, minority people that are in these minority groups that say wanted to get ahead, join the military, were trying to be part of United Myanmar, are now getting pulled out of the military, getting pulled out of their ranks. They're being interrogated. Um, some are being shot, some are being detained. They literally are viewing it as if there are spies in our midst, there are spies in our midst. So it's not just the groups of uh, minorities that they're taking out into these areas that where these massacres. It's not just those groups, but specifically the who's vulnerable is if you're if you're from one of these minority uh, tribes or communities in Myanmar, like they say, four or five, that it doesn't feel settled when I go into the energy of Myanmar. It feels to me like this was once a tribal pre colonial society, that there are four or five different kingdoms in these, like, this, like, almost like an island nation. And with that comes all these rebels. And now the military is trying desperately to hold on, and you have these rebel forces, and it was supposed to be, it was this kind of story that they were going to have a united Myanmar, and that all the provinces, that everybody was going to be part of this united Myanmar, and that was the purpose of the military. And so you joined the military, you had kids from these remote villages that were supposed to join the military, and we were going to be one Myanmar. And now those people are being pulled out of military academies, being pulled out and being accused of being spies, etc. So the concern, obviously, you want the UN to come in, you want investigators to come in. They're talking about UN inspectors, etc. From the perspective of the military, they think from the outside world is naive because they don't understand that attempted assassinations and the instability in the country is really a problem, and that is precisely why they have to have the military running the country. And they want people to know in the West that they feel they have no choice because of this instability from these 4 or 5 groups. And that's why we have to clamp down. And that's why we have to have a military, because if there wasn't a military, they would all overrun us. Everybody would be killing each other because of there's 4 or 5 tribes and nobody gets along, or 4 or 5 main communities, and everybody thinks that they should be the head honcho. And to be quite honest with you, you may not like us, the military, but we actually, it would be worse if we weren't here. I don't know. I'm just a remote viewer. Um, but that's the situation. So it's terrifying from both ends. Terrifying if you sent your child off to go serve and get an academy and maybe work his way up the ranks. And now this terrifying situation has happened because of the instability in the country. And I can throw cards on it maybe later to see how this will end, but right now it looks like it's a very unstable situation. All right, this was a quick remote just because when I had done the meditation tonight, that was where I found myself. All right, thanks for watching, everyone. We'll see you next time. Night.